This video is my 5-night tour to the Netherlands, which I've just done in July 2023, and I'm hoping that it explains the basics of bike touring, which quite a few people ask me how I start and how I decide to go to different places and things like that, so it's just to give the basics. When choosing a bike tour, there's obviously loads of different things to think about. Where to go for one, what's the weather going to be like, is it going to be hilly, is it going to be easy to find food and accommodation, how do I get there, am I going to take the train, am I going to cycle there, am I going to fly there, and will I be staying in hotels or do I need to take camping equipment? And once you've decided on these things, it makes it easier then to decide what to take in terms of clothing and equipment, how long to go for, and how much it will cost. As it was my first time abroad, I wanted somewhere nice and simple, straightforward to get to, where English was spoken and I'd have no issues with accommodation or the food or things like that. And so, went to the Netherlands. The easiest and cheapest way to get to the Netherlands was by the ferry from Harwich to the Hook of Holland. In order to get down to Harwich from West Yorkshire, I use the Trainline app, which I find is really good and offers some really good deals if you book well in advance for trains. Once I book the train, the next step is to make sure you can take the bike onto the train. Some companies allow this without booking, but some require you to book. So I had to book onto LNER for a bike space, and in general they tend to always be available if you do them in good time. The LNER bike rack was an absolute nightmare. Bearing in mind this is a brand new train, they really have put no thought into getting bikes on there. This is the Greater Anglia train which I later got, and it's very similar to the Northern trains, how they have spaces for bikes, so easy to get on, no issues at all, and don't even have to book them. When it comes to accommodation, I like using Premier Inn. They can have really good deals sometimes, but on this occasion they're really expensive. I also tried Travelodge, but again too expensive. So I looked at Warm Showers, which I've used in the past. It is very hit and miss. I think it's probably better abroad than in England, where I've sent a number of requests which have either been ignored or there's been no room. My next option was to use Airbnb, which I've used over the past few years, and I find this really good. You can get accommodation for decent prices in areas where you wouldn't normally find big hotels, and so for an overnight stay it was great, and I managed to find somewhere a couple of miles from the port in Harwich. In Holland, I was going to use the Friends with Bikes website, which is a really great concept, and I think I was first made aware of it either on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever. But basically it's a group of cyclists that rent out their address for anybody who's touring on a bike to use, and it's all at really good prices. I think it's €25 a night, and that includes breakfast as well. And there's a whole range of different accommodations, ranging from houses to boats to garden rooms to caravans, etc. And you'll see some of the accommodation that I went to later on. And once I've roughly come up with a route, I use the accommodation to firm up on where I'm actually going to go, and that can sometimes dictate my route as well. But a really great site, and met some really great people, and it only costs €10 to join for the year. For navigation, I use the Komoot app, which I find is better than the other navigation apps that I've tried. It's free to download, definitely better than Google Maps, and is reasonably easy to use, and I pair that with my Garmin Edge sat-nav, which seems to get me to where I need to go. Now for the trip. So I started off at home in West Yorkshire, getting the train from Wakefield, and I took 3 trains down to Harwich for the ferry, and the last train had nobody on it apart from myself. I did manage to drop my helmet on the train tracks, so not the best start, but I did manage to cycle to Harwich the following morning, get on the ferry, and this is the area where you put your bikes. Not the best, but it does a job. You just tie them up with a bit of rope. On the ferry, I got a breakfast. It was really good. It cost about £12, and you could go up as many times as you wanted, so I just made sure I had enough to last me the day. The crossing from Harwich was nice and steady. The sea was calm, no issues at all. Went quite fast, took about 7 hours. This is my Strava route of the journey into Rotterdam, which was reasonably straightforward. This was a cycling track straight off the ferry, more or less. You can hear wind in the background, but it wasn't too bad. Once into Rotterdam, took a few photos around Central Station. Couldn't believe how many bikes are parked up. Totally different to England, where you don't leave your bike in case it gets stolen. And one of the many canals where I took a photo of. My Rotterdam accommodation was through the Friends with Bikes website, and this is actually an old prison that's been now renovated into accommodation. It's still got many original items like the barbed wire, the CCTV, the high walls, and no cars are actually allowed into the area. It's all for walking or for bikes. This was the dog at the accommodation, a beagle, and this was the living room, which I didn't use. I was on the top floor, and this was my room, which was amazing. I had a coffee machine and everything I needed, with a private bathroom and shower, and this was the view. So a great night spent in Rotterdam. Day 2 was a ride from Rotterdam to Utrecht via Kinderdijk. Started off quite wet, so I took a bit of a shelter, but it soon brightened up, and onto my first ferry over to Kinderdijk, which is a lovely area. There were lots of tourists from America and Japan that I think had come on the nearby River Canal cruise boat. But yeah, nice little area for a ride round. Could spend a couple of hours, learn about the history of the dikes and the windmills. And this is the River Canal cruise boat that I mentioned. Once in Utrecht, I wanted to go to this multi-storey bike park, which I'd heard about, which is just something completely different. Here's a bit of a video of me cycling around it. And I believe the first day's parking is free. There's thousands upon thousands of these bikes. And I think out of all the cities I went to in Holland, Utrecht was the best one in terms of cycling. The city centre was absolutely packed with people in restaurants and bars. The nice weather bringing people out. Managed to find some chips, or fritter as I believe they're called, which came with some curry sauce, and they were quite nice. And on this night I was staying in the first houseboat you can see on the left, which is just outside the city centre. First time sleeping on a houseboat. I had the whole entire lower floor, which was really big inside, and this is a picture of the living area stroke kitchen area. Again, private shower, nice bedroom, very comfy, and all for €25. The next day was a ride from Utrecht to The Hague via Gouda. Straightforward ride really, the longest of the trip actually, and I went past these things on the way, I'm not sure what to call them. Bit of a pit stop, and in Gouda, never got to try the cheese, but it seemed a lovely little town. But I did manage to eat one of the stroopwafels. Later on in The Hague, I had an amazing pizza from an amazing pizza shop really, where the guy served shots of limoncello as you waited for your pizza. which were free. So that was nice. Stayed on the outskirts of The Hague, and again another really good accommodation. Had the entire middle space to myself, private shower and what have you. Then it was time to make my way up to Amsterdam, but I went via Parkrun, which I love doing. So I went to the nearest one to The Hague called Zuiderpark. A really nice park, and as you'd expect in Holland, very, very flat, and nearly got a PB. And this was a reward, a nice cup of coffee and a muffin. The ride along the coast was fantastic, lovely weather, and it was just loads of dunes and lovely cycle tracks and reasonably quiet. Got to say, the cycling in Netherlands just puts England to shame. Just miles upon miles of these lanes. On the coast, I went through loads of little villages and towns, had a few rests, a few pit stops, some nice food from Lidl. This is on the way into Amsterdam. It's starting to get busier and busier. Obviously there's quite a few canals there, so I took a nice photo. I had 5 minutes there, and this is just a typical Amsterdam picture where there's bikes everywhere, just locked up everywhere. It was mid to late afternoon and it was far too busy to go on a bike, so I started to make my way to the accommodation for the night. The accommodation for this night was a little garden house, but whilst it's small on the outside, it's got everything you absolutely need: kettle, fridge, microwave, shower, the bed which turns into a double bed if needed to.
Tour of my garden room.
Really
I'm stopping
great
for 2
stay here,
nights.
and the family were lovely.
Nice.
The son, called Zeb, looks after this, and he does a great job.
Nice shower. Moving on to the office space. We have a fridge and a microwave. And then the bedroom space.
Again, this was a Friends with Bikes website.
And a TV.
The TV and Netflix
What more can you
and
want?
YouTube, which was a bonus. And this was the great breakfast. And this is the dog called Shoe, who enjoyed chasing shadows. A really friendly dog. The next day I just rode into Amsterdam and went quite early to avoid the craziness, and it was quite good, a lot better than the day before, which was just absolutely manic. Massive queue, so I had to settle for a photo outside, which I was quite happy with, but I will return one day. And I just tended to cycle around the area, went on the ferry over to the north side as well. It was just nice going round when it was reasonably quiet. I went to the best friet shop in Amsterdam, and they were very, very nice. And also topped it off with a lovely hot dog. It was now time to make my way back home, and that was via Schiphol Airport, where I got the train. And yet again, the cycle tracks are amazing. Cycle tracks from the accommodation right through to the airport, and managed to do a bit of plane spotting. at the airport, really straightforward, as you'd expect to get on the train. Remember, you have to pay extra to take the bike on the train. I think it was about €7 or €8. And then that is the final photo in Holland. This was all the spirits I could manage to carry on the bike. Treated myself to an apple pie, which was amazing. And this was my view pretty much all the way across the sea to Harwich. Just wanted to show how much stuff that I used and didn't use on this tour. Bearing in mind I was away for 7 nights. The stuff on the right is stuff I didn't use, and the stuff on the left is what I did use. So it goes to show there's probably a full pannier, if not more, of stuff on the right that I didn't need to take. I suppose that's the one downfall of Ortlieb panniers. You can fit so much stuff in them that you tend to take more than what you really need. But clearly there's a lot of weight there, so in future I think I'll learn from that. Before I finish, just want to mention a couple of things I wouldn't be without on a cycling tour. A sat-nav, which is far better than using Google Maps, and chamois cream and Sudocrem. Thankfully I didn't need either on this tour, but definitely worth taking both just in case, because you never know. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found it interesting and not found me too boring. But I am just getting used to doing these videos, so got to start somewhere. But yeah, any comments, leave them down below. And if you can like and subscribe, thank you for watching. Bye.